Can you see?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, if this is the case, so our department basically started its journey in 1961. Department of Plant Pathology. Basically, the role of this department is to provide education on plant microbe interactions, disease management, basics things. I mean, interaction of between plant and microbes at molecular level and so on. Many concepts basically. So if you see the definition in the slides, you can easily understand what's basically our business. So plant pathology is the study of the organism and of the environmental factor that cause disease in plants. So means the department deals or the subject deals with the organisms and the environmental factors that cause disease in crop plants or any plants, and how this organism or factors cause disease or induce disease in the crop plants or plants. And finally, the methods of preventing or controlling the diseases or reducing the damage caused by them. So three basic things. Did you get the point? What is plant pathology? If someone asks you about the subjects, can you define it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So means study of organisms and environmental factor that cause disease and the mechanism by which this organism induce or cause disease. And finally, the methods how we can control or manage the disease. So three distinct features of the subjects: organism and environmental factors, and also the mechanisms and of the methods of preventing the disease. So three major features of the subjects. That means a plant pathologist basically have three major works or business to deal with. The subject deals with these three major things. So very interesting subject. Hope you will enjoy in the subsequent semesters. Our department basically offer courses at level 2 semester 2, level semester 2, level 4 semester 1. In addition, we basically offer another courses, plant disease management and plant disease clinic as elective in level 4 semester 2. Who can say? Anybody can say what is plant pathology? Can you memorize? Hello?
जी सर
जी सर
বলো
Yes, sir.
যদি মেমোরাইজ করতে পারো বলো।
Plant pathology is scientific study of disease in plants caused by pathogens and environmental conditions.
Okay, so three things. Even you don't need to recite the poem like this. Just three things you need to recap. So one thing is organism and environmental factors that cause disease. Second thing is the mechanism by which these factors induce disease. And the third factor is the methods or approaches of preventing or controlling the disease aimed to reduce the damage caused by the plant disease. Okay? And there is another advanced definition. Basically, a plant pathologist is a plant doctor. Is a plant doctor. So if you consider like a doctor, if you see in the United States of America, they have a strong plant pathology, and in every university or every state they have plant disease clinic. Like them, we have also a plant disease.
ক্লাসটা রেকর্ড করলে ভালো হয়।
Hmm?
ক্লাসটা একটু রেকর্ড করলে ভালো হয় স্যার।
Record.
জি স্যার।
So let's see. In another word, you can define plant pathology is an integrative science. Integrative science and profession. You see, also science, and you can consider as profession. I mean the plant doctor. Okay.
Screen share off.
স্যার স্লাইড দেখা যাচ্ছে।
স্যার স্ক্রিনটা শেয়ার করেন স্যার।
I understand. Okay. Can you? Is okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So there is an integrative science and profession that uses and combine the knowledge, basic things from different discipline. For example, botany, mycology, bacteriology, virology, nematology. You should have knowledge on plant anatomy, also plant physiology, genetics, molecular biology and genetic engineering, biochemistry, horticulture, the morphology and anatomy. So you should have a very clear understanding about the morphology and anatomy of a plant if you want to deals with the if you want to study plant pathology. And you should have a very good idea on the fungi, study of fungi called mycology, and clear understanding of bacteria, that means bacteriology, virus, virology, nematode means creamy, nematology. And also because after infection, the pathogen can modulate or change the physiology of the plant. So you should have a clear understanding of plant physiology, genetics also, because if you want to develop a disease-resistant variety, you should have a very clear understanding on basic or methodology of plant breeding or genetics. Molecular biology, definitely, because basically to induce a disease, microbes need to interact with the plants at molecular or cellular level. And biochemistry, because when you study molecular biology, you need we need clear understanding on DNA or RNA. Horticultural science, I mean the fruits, vegetables, etc. for production. Agronomy, you should have a clear idea on field crop production. Tissue culture as well, and soil science. You have to grow the crop in the soil. So you have to you should have a clear idea. That's why in this modern definition they say it's an integrative science and profession. Profession means you will give some service to the community or to the farmers. Clear? So
Yes, sir.
If I want to summarize, the subject basically deals with the study of the organism, okay, and the mechanism and the methods of controlling or managing the disease to reduce the damage. In other words, it's the integrative science and profession that require knowledge from different disciplines of science. Then you see after plant pathology, basically what's the microbes doing? They cause disease in the crop plants. We call it plant disease. Plant disease and hello. So what is plant disease? Any malfunctioning of host cell and tissues. Malfunctioning means deviation of normal function, called malfunctioning. Any malfunctioning of host cell and tissues that results from continuous irritation, that means continuous reaction with the host plant by biotic factors, means pathogenic agent or organism, or abiotic factors, means environmental factors, temperature, moisture, light, nutrient, and so on, lead to the development of symptoms. So malfunctioning of host cell and tissues, basically that may come from by continuous irritation by biotic or abiotic factor and leads to development of symptoms. And in other words, you can say the impairment, anything impairment, protibandhakata, you can say the plant disease and impairment of the normal state of plant by causal agent that interrupts or modify its normal structure, growth, function, or other activities. When the plants infected by microbes, its structure, growth, function, and other activities interrupted or modified, we call it plant disease. So plant disease and impairment of normal state of a plant by some causal agent that interrupts or modified its normal structure, growth, function, and other activities. Another definition. Moreover, you can see at the bottom, disease in plant can be defined, or plant disease can be defined as the series of invisible and visible responses of plant cell and tissues to pathogenic organism or environmental factor that result in advanced changes in the form, function, or integrity of the plant and may lead to partial impairment or death of plants, of the entire plants. So from this 4 definition, you can say that any morphological and physiological deviation of plants due to continuous irritation or due to infection by biotic and abiotic factors called plant disease. Did you get the point? What's the summary of this slide? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Malfunctioning of cell and tissues due to infection by pathogens or abiotic factors. If you improve your definition, that means interruption of normal growth, structure, and function due to pathogenic infection we call plant disease. Sometimes it can be defined as a series of changes, means visible or invisible. Invisible means just the microbes come in contact with the host. And visible means when it expresses the symptoms. আমাদের যখন রোগ হয় আমরা কি দেখি ইনফেকশনের পরে প্রথমে শরীরটা কয়েকদিন ধরো ম্যাচ করতেছে, ব্যথা করতেছে, মাথা ব্যথা করতেছে, কোনো অন্য কোনোই নাই, কিন্তু পরে দেখা যাচ্ছে যে আমার জ্বর এসে গেল। আমাদের নিজের দিয়েও কিন্তু আমরা বুঝতে পারি যে আমাদের শরীরে প্যাথোজেন অ্যাটাক করছে। ঠিক একইভাবে you can notice the infection in plants by invisible. Just plants maybe response to the pathogenic infections, but it will be visible when you see some changes, its form, its structure or function or some other integrity, and that may lead to partial impairment, even death of the plants. We call it plant disease. So if you summarize the morphology and physiology, both altered due to infection by pathogen, we call plant disease. That's why a plant becomes disease when it is continuously disturbed that results in an abnormal physiological process that disrupts the plant's essential physiological and biochemical system that elicit characteristic pathological conditions. So that's the things. So plant pathology, plant disease. So very close. Now you need another thing. If you want to see the infection in the plant, you need another thing. What's the things? What next? Can you guess something? Plant pathology. No, plant pathology, and we learned what is a plant disease, and then the third thing is what will be. Can you guess something? What will be in the next slide?
Mechanism.
Yes, mechanism. No, mechanism you will study in
prevention.
Okay, so I'll let you know. Before going to that slides, I want to explain the things you see here. What's basically happened due to infection by plant pathogens. You see what are the basic functions in plant. You see, plant to survive need to absorb water and nutrients, and this absorbed water and nutrient need to translocate it in other parts of the plants, and then excess water need to be transpirated, and plant require photosynthesis to produce or manufacture food. Finally, need to reproduce, give you flower, fruits, and so on, what we are expecting. And all these basic functions basically interfere with the infection by the plants. For example, some pathogens survive in the soil and they infect the root and the roots become rotten. যদি পচে যায় root তাহলে কি affected হবে? Water and nutrients absorption হবে না. Okay? And some pathogen attack vascular systems. For example, bacterial wilt or something wilt or some disease called canker. You will learn day by day. So wilt and canker basically infect the xylem vessel. Xylem vessel, hello. If xylem vessel infected, then translocation disturbed. I mean the translocation, water and nutrients interrupted. And then also the transpiration. And if the foliage is infected, for example, if some pathogen produce spot, blights, rust, mildews, and so on, you will see the transpiration and photosynthesis also affected. And finally, if the flowers and fruits infected, means reproduction infected. In a way, plant pathogen basically affecting the morphology, physiology, and so on, reproduction of the plants. My purpose is to share the slide to get the points. Basically, what's the pathogen doing? If you see in the right side, you will see the infection by the pathogens. For example, root rotten, xylem vessel affected. For example, foliage affected. For example, flowers and fruits affected. What will be the impact on the plant physiology? That means absorption of water and nutrients affected. If root infected, then if the foliage infected, transpiration and photosynthesis affected. If flowers and fruits infected, then the reproduction of the plants affected. And if the xylem vessel, for example, due to some infection, for example, bacterial, fungal, and anemic wilt, and some canker diseases, then translocation of the absorbed water and nutrients affected. So, did you get the point? What are the?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
If there will be a question, show diagrammatically the impact of pathogen infection on host plants. Then you can draw this diagram and show the structure like this. In a way, you can explain that. That's why we are saying here, any malfunctioning of host cell and tissues that results from continuous irritation by a biotic factor or abiotic factor and lead to the development of the symptoms. Symptoms here means rotten, canker, even spots, blights, rust, mildews, mosaic, all these are symptoms. And these symptoms basically affected the plants by altering the absorption, translocation, transpiration, photosynthesis, and reproduction. That is all. What basically we are looking for? Who are the enemies? Pathogen, right? So any entity, shatta, agents or pathogenic microorganisms that can incite disease, we call pathogens. Any entity that can incite disease, we call pathogens. In other words, you can say the agents or pathogenic microorganisms such as fungi, bacteria, viruses, protozoa, and nematodes, as well as unfavorable environmental conditions such as lack or excess of temperature, nutrients, moisture, light, and the presence of toxic chemical in air or soil that cause disease in plants. So the pathogenic and microorganisms and unfavorable environmental conditions that cause disease in plant we call pathogen. Clear? And we can summarize the definition in a way: any entity that include pathogenic microorganism and environmental factor that induce or incite disease in plant called pathogens. So three things you can now explain, right? One, what is plant pathology? What is a plant disease? And what is a pathogen? Who is the host? Plant or pathogen?
Plant.
Plant. Okay. So very good things. And in this diagram, I explained you how this pathogen basically affecting the basic functions in a plant. And what are the basic functions? You can see easily in these slides. Now, we have to have a clear understanding of the history of plant pathology. That means how the subject, the genesis of the subjects or the development of plant pathology as a science, how the plant pathology subjects basically developed as a science. You see, the history comprises 4 phases. Ancient period, dark period, Renaissance period, modern period. Renaissance period means 1400 to 1600 things, and modern period after 1600. And ancient, you'll see the ancient period of things. This is the ancient period, and you can see here 300 to 286 before Christ. খ্রিস্টজন্মের 300 থেকে 286 যে সময়টা সেটা হচ্ছে তোমার ancient period of the subjects. And in this phase, the only scientist contributed to the development of plant pathology called Theophrastus. What is the name? Theophrastus. So if someone asks you, write the contribution of a scientist in ancient period of plant pathology, then Theophrastus, Greek philosopher, and he was the student of Aristotle. So you see, what's his contribution? He wrote many books, and out of these books, 2 very important: The Nature of Plants, Morphology and Anatomy. He explained the morphology and anatomy of cultivated, wild, and other crop plants in his book Nature of Plants. And responses of vegetable growth, in this book, he basically described the reproduction from seed by grafting, intercultural operation, management practices, and so on. He described. For writing these 2 important books, he then considered as father of botany. Who is the father of botany? Theophrastus. Why?
So the Nature of Plants books এর জন্য
2টি বুক সে ইম্পর্টেন্ট 2টা বুক সে লিখছে, যেটাতে সে কিছু ডিজিজের কথাও বলছে। আরেকটি বুক সে করছে Enquiry into Plants. In this book, he basically described the diseases of trees, cereals, and legumes crop. Okay. And if you see the red mark area at the bottom, you will see Theophrastus and his contemporaries, মানে তার সহযোগীরা বা তার সমসাময়িক যে সায়েন্টিস্টরা, তারা কি বলতো? Being unable to explain plant diseases, believe that God controlled the weather that brought about the disease as punishment for the wrongs and sins the man had committed. Theophrastus এবং তার সাথে যারা কাজ করতো, তাদের কি বিলিভ ছিল? যে মানুষ যে ভুল কর্ম এবং পাপ কর্ম করতেছে, এটার জন্যই আল্লাহ বা গড যেটাই বলো, সেটি গাছে রোগ দিচ্ছে। এটা তাদের ইয়া ছিল। However, his approach basically observational, just অনুমান নির্ভর. No, he did not perform any, or he did not conduct any experiment to prove it, but he had speculation on that. Clear? And at that time, they believed theory of spontaneous generation. What is the theory? People everywhere believe that plant diseases as well as human and animal diseases just happen spontaneously. Whatever was observed on the disease plant basically produced to be the product or as a result of the product of the disease. Diseaseর কারণে ডিজিজে তারা সেটা বিশ্বাস করতো, কোনো অর্গানিজম দিয়ে ডিজিজ হয় এটা বিশ্বাস করতো না। এটা কি বলে? থিওরি অফ স্পন্টেনিয়াস জেনারেশন। তাহলে দেখছো এনসিয়েন্ট পিরিয়ডটা কি ছিল?
থিওফ্রাস্টাস কি তিনি কি কোনো পরীক্ষা করেছিল, বা শুধু এটাও শুধু তার থিওরি?
না, থিওরি, জাস্ট থিওরি, অনুমান নির্ভর। That's why at the bottom of this slide you see a sentence: his approach was observational and speculative rather than experimental. Did you see at the bottom the last sentence?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So if so, this is observational and speculative. কি ধারণা করতো? থিওফ্রাস্টের মেইন কন্ট্রিবিউশন হচ্ছে সে তিনটা বই লেখছিল, যে বইগুলিতে সে মরফোলজি, অ্যানাটমি, প্রোডাকশন, রিপ্রোডাকশন, ম্যানেজমেন্ট, ইন্টারকালচার অপারেশন সো অন ডেসক্রাইব করছে। এগুলি ডেসক্রাইব করার কারণে তাকে একটা খেতাব দেওয়া হয়েছে ফাদার অফ বটানি। বাট তার সময়ে কিন্তু বিশ্বাস করা হতো না যে রোগবালাই কোনো জীবাণু দিয়ে হতো। কি দিয়ে হতো? কি 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 বিশ্বাস করতো তারা? আমি তোমাকে কল করবো পরে। হ্যাঁ, at that time they believed
করে ওটার জন্য সিম্পটমস দেখা দেয় প্লান্ট।
হ্যাঁ, গাছে যে রোগ বালাই হয় সবগুলি মানুষের ভুল এবং পাপ কাজের জন্য হয়। এই সময় তারা থিওফ্রাস্টার এবং তার কন্টেম্পোরারিরা এটা বিশ্বাস করত। কিন্তু তার যে ধারণাটা কোনো এক্সপেরিমেন্টাল ছিল না, স্পেকুলেটিভ, অবজারভেশনাল, জাস্ট অনুমান নির্ভর, অনুমানের উপর। তার এনশিয়েন্ট পিরিয়ডটা ছিল ঠিক এরকম প্ল্যান্ট প্যাথোলজি। আমরা জানি কয়টা পিরিয়ডের কথা বলছিলাম, একটা ডার্ক পিরিয়ড, এবং এনশিয়েন্ট পিরিয়ডটা 300 to 286 বিফোর খ্রিস্ট। ডার্ক পিরিয়ড দেখো, অ্যানো ডমিনি, অ্যানোডমিনি পিরিয়ড বলে, এডি বলে, অ্যানোডমিনি পিরিয়ড, 300 to 1300 অ্যানোডমিনি পিরিয়ড, অলসো কল্ড প্রি রিনেসেন্স পিরিয়ড। মানে যে পিরিয়ডটা আসতেছে রিনেসেন্স পিরিয়ড, যেটা সেটার আগের পিরিয়ডটা কে বলছে? প্রি রিনেসেন্স পিরিয়ড। নো ইনক্রিজ অফ নলেজ ইন প্লান্ট প্যাথোলজি ইন দ্যাট টাইম, এট দ্যাট টাইম। এই সময় কোনো কি হয় নাই, এই প্লান্ট প্যাথোলজি সাবজেক্টের কোনো ডেভেলপমেন্ট হয়নি, কোনো ডেভেলপমেন্ট নেই। হ্যাঁ, কোনো ডেভেলপমেন্ট নেই, এই সময়ে কোনো ডেভেলপমেন্ট ছিল না। No increase of knowledge, there is no deposition of knowledge on plant pathology in that period, in the dark period. But after that, you see, in the mid 1600s, a group of French farmers, you see, farmers also observe. What they observe? Wheat rust disease in wheat, and they also observed the wheat plants near the barberry bushes. There is a plant called barberry. There is a barberry plant. If there is barberry plant, they observe more symptom of rust in wheat. The farmer then thought that there might be some role of barberry plants, okay, or the disease moved from barberry plant to wheat plant. Then they asked their government, French government, to pass the first plant disease regulatory legislation rule, মানে আইন করার জন্য তারা ফোর্স দিছিল যে to cut and destroy the barberry bushes to protect the wheat crop in mid 1600s. Did you see after that dark period what's advantage? একটা লম্বা সময় পরে কি আসলো? What they observed? The French farmer noticed wheat rust disease, but rust disease in wheat, and they also observed the symptom of rust is more severe in the field that are very close to the barberry plant. And they observed, they speculated that there might be a relation or correlation between the wheat rust and barberry plant, or the disease may come from barberry plant. And then they asked their government, French government, to pass some rules or regulation or amendment to cut the barberry plant and destroy them. To what is the purpose? To protect the wheat plant. You see, after 70 years, in 1670, you see the French physician Tholier. Tholier observed what he observed. You see, the ergotism, another disease, deadly disease, because it creates problem to human health in the Central Europe. But they observed that the disease cannot transmit from one human to another. But there is a correlation that the abnormalities they observe in the human due to ergotism in 1670. And at the same time, Robert Hooke, another Englishman, England scientist, invented double-lensed compound microscope. And he observed some cells. Of plant tissues after through his invention. So did you see in this period? Show the French farmer observed wheat rust, and after 70 years, French physician Tholier he observed ergotism. After that, but at the same time, the English scientist Robert Hooke invented a microscope, compound microscope at that time. Although there is a controversy, I'll let you know. Then after that, you see,
Yes, sir.
So just after how many years? 5 years. Just after 5 years, Antonius van Leeuwenhoek, a Holland man, we call Dasman. What he did? What's his contribution? Leeuwenhoek invented compound microscope in 1676 through his contribution to the improvement of lenses and structures of compound microscope that basically invented by Hooke. You see, Robert Hooke যা ডেভেলপ করছে বা জেসারিয়াস জেনসন যা ডেভেলপ করছে সেটাকে ইমপ্রুভ করছে 1676 এর দিকে কে? হ্যালো,
Leeuwenhoek.
এবং এটা তোমরা জানো যে সে মাইক্রোস্কোপ আবিষ্কার করছে, কিন্তু আসলে সে মাইক্রোস্কোপের মূল আবিষ্কারক না, সে এটা ইমপ্রুভমেন্ট করছে, এটাকে আর একটু মডিফাই করছে। And he observed bacteria under microscope. He first observed bacteria under microscope in 1683. You see, at just after 7 years, he observed bacteria using his microscope. For his contribution, he considered as father of microscopy and microbiology. Father of microscopy and microbiology. Who is the father of botany? And who is the father of microscopy and microbiology?
Antony
van Leeuwenhoek or Antonius van Leeuwenhoek, whatever you can write. So what's his contribution?
microscope.
Yes, he invented microscope, or you can say he has a lot of contribution for the improvement or in improvement of modern compound microscope. And another contribution he has, he first observed bacteria under microscope. For his enormous contribution, he considered father of microscopy and microbiology. In 1675, just after 1 year, you see, how many years later?
5 years.
1683 to 1735. You see, more than 100 years. You see, the Swedish philosopher, botanist, Carl von Linné, published his main work, Systema Nature, by which, you see, he established the diagnosis of plant species and botanical nomenclature of plants. So, diagnosis of plant species and botanical nomenclature. These two things basically proposed or invented by Carl von Linné, the Swedish philosopher or botanist. In 1735, you see, 1683. Can you consider how many years? 17 means 50, after 50 years. You can say more than 50 years later, this philosopher or botanist. And you see, 1859, after a long time, 1735 to 1859, how many years? 65? How many years? 124 years later, right? The Englishman Charles Darwin, you see, the origin of species by means of natural selection, যে বইটা সেটা সেই করলো। And he showed that species of all organism, plants, animals evolve over time and adapt to changes in their environment for survival. আমাদের যে অর্গানিজম গুলো আছে, প্ল্যান্ট আছে, অ্যানিমেল আছে, সবাই তাদের বংশগত চেঞ্জ হয় এবং এনভায়রনমেন্টের সাথে খাপ খাওয়ানোর জন্য তাদের বেঁচে থাকার জন্য এনভায়রনমেন্টের সাথে নিজেদেরকে খাপ খাইয়ে নেয়। এটি বললো, এরা এটুকু বললো। তাহলে তোমরা কি এখন বুঝতে পারছো যে এনশিয়েন্ট পিরিয়ডে থিওফ্রাস্টাস বলতো ডিজিজ কি দিয়ে হতো?
আল্লাহ
প্রদত্ত জিনিস ভুল বা পাপ কর্মের জন্য হতো, এবং ডিজিজের কারণে হতো, কোনো অর্গানিজম দায়ী না। এটাকে বলে থিওরি অফ স্পন্টেনিয়াস জেনারেশন। তোমরা এগুলি ডেভেলপমেন্ট হলো। তারপর তোমরা দেখবা আরেকটু ডেভেলপমেন্ট হলো যে মাইকোলজি, স্টাডি অফ ফাঞ্জাই কল্ড মাইকোলজি। এই মাইকোলজির ফাদার হিসেবে কনসিডার করা হতো, ফাদার অফ মাইকোলজি কনসিডার করা হতো মেসেলি, ইটালিয়ান বটানিস্ট পিয়ার অ্যান্টনি মাইসেলি অর মেসেলি যেটাই বলো, ইটালিয়ান বটানিস্ট। সে কি করলো? অবজার্ভ ফাঙ্গাল স্পোর ফর দ্য ফার্স্ট টাইম এন্ড কন্ডাক্টেড মেনি স্পোর জার্মিনেশন। সে কি করলো? সে ফাঙ্গাসের স্পোর অবজার্ভ করলো এবং দেখলো যে যদি মিডিয়া বা খাবার দেওয়া হয় তাহলে ফাঙ্গাসের স্পোর জার্মিনেট করে। সেটা স্টাডি করলো এবং দেখলো যে ফাঞ্জাই অ্যারাইজ ফ্রম দেয়ার ওন স্পোর, কোনো অন্য কিছু থেকে আসে না বা এমনিতে হয় না, তার স্পোর থেকেই ফাঙ্গাসের তৈরি হয়, ফাঙ্গাস তার স্পোর থেকেই তৈরি হয়। বাট you see, the spontaneous general theory was so embedded in the people's mind, nobody believed Micheli's evidence. সেইটুকু দেখলো কিন্তু কেউ তার কথা বিশ্বাস করলো না। And he published a book, Nova Plantarum Genera, in which he gave description about 1900 species. সেটা একটা বর্ণনা সে দিল এখানে। এবং এই 1900 স্পিসিস দিয়েছে, তার মধ্যে 900 হচ্ছে ফাঞ্জাই, 900 ফাঞ্জাই। তার কন্ট্রিবিউশন কিন্তু বিরাট। সে কি করলো? ফাঙ্গাসের স্পোর আইডেন্টিফাই করলো এবং আইডেন্টিফাই করলো he first proved that fungus arise or fungi arise from its own spore. But the people always believe that the theory of spontaneous generation, and nobody believed his invention. And he also published a book for this contribution. Miceli considered as father of mycology. Then you see 1729, 1743. How many years? How many years?
24 years.
14 years.
14 years, you are right. 14 years. Who is the scientist? Needham, the Englishman. He first observed nematode, creamy, inside small, abnormally rounded wheat kernels. He observed that some kernels rounded and show abnormal structure. And then he observed inside those kernel, the nematode, means creamy. But you see, they failed to show or suggest that they were the cause of this problem. কিন্তু সে আবার এটা প্রমাণ করতে পারলো না। সে খালি অবজার্ভ করলো যে কার্নেল গুলি একটু হয়ে গেছে, রাউন্ডেড এবং অ্যাবনর্মাল শেপ হয়েছে, কিন্তু এগুলি যে এই ক্রিমিটার কারণে হয়েছে সেটা সে প্রমাণ করতে পারেনি। এটাই তার কন্ট্রিবিউশন ছিল 1743 তে। 1743 তে তার এটা একটা অবজারভেশন ছিল নিধামের। Then you see two scientists, 1755, you see 43, then 55, 12 years, how many years? 12 years later, Tillet, a French scientist, he first proved that smart is caused by a pathogen, by microorganism. That's why wheat smart is a contagious disease, means caused by some microorganism, and he believed that it was a poison substance contained in the smart dust. Still সে কিন্তু বিলিভ করতেছে এখানে কিছু পয়জনের কারণে হচ্ছে, rather than living microorganism. সে একদিকে বলতেছে contagious disease, কিন্তু বলতেছে না এটাই সব পয়জন যে আছে সেই পয়জনের কারণে হচ্ছে, সেটা যে জীবাণু সেটা সে আর বলতেছে না। Tillet's a contribution and published a paper on burnt of or smart of wheat. He reported the chemical treatment of seed, এবং সে এটাও দেখলো যে এই সিডগুলিকে যদি কপার ফাঞ্জিসাইড দিয়ে ট্রিটমেন্ট দেওয়া যায় তাহলে এই পয়জনটা চলে যায়, সেটা প্রমাণ করলো। Did you see the science growing, the name plant pathology growing as a science? 1755 দিকে দেখো, wheat smart contagious disease he proved, but he failed to prove that it is caused by microorganism. He published some paper and also proposed that treating the seed with some copper fungicides can eliminate these poisonous substances. And you see, after later 52 years later, Prevost, another Frenchman, another French colleague, he repeated and expanded Tillet's experiments. সে এই তার ওই ওয়ার্কটাকে সে রিপিট করলো এবং আরেকটু মডিফিকেশন আনলো, এবং সে বললো, সে একটা কনক্লুশনে আসলো যে না পয়জনাস সাবস্টেন্সেস না, হ্যাঁ, স্মার্ট অফ হুইট কস্ট বাই এ ফাঙ্গাস, একটা ফাঙ্গাস দিয়েই হয়, একটা ছত্রাক দিয়েই এই ডিজিজটা হয়, সে প্রমাণ করলো। সে বললো পয়জনাস সাবস্টেন্সেস এবং এই পয়জনটা প্রপার ট্রিটমেন্ট দিলে চলে যায়। কিন্তু না, প্রিভিয়াস আরেকটু তার রিসার্চটা করলো, কন্টিনিউ করলো, দেখলো যে নো, হুইট স্মার্ট বেসিক্যালি কস্ট বাই এ ফাঙ্গাস, প্রিভিয়াস। তারপরে একটা নতুন ইয়া শুরু হলো। হ্যাঁ, আমরা এটা আগামী ক্লাসে এখান থেকে শুরু করব, ঠিক আছে? হ্যালো,
থ্যাংক ইউ স্যার।
ওকে স্যার।
এই পর্যন্তই করবো, তো তোমরা একটু লাইনে থাকো, আমি একটা দিব তোমাদের। আর এই পর্যন্ত তোমরা মনে রেখো, এটা আবার আমরা আগামী ক্লাসে বইটা শেষ করে একটু টোটালটাকে একটু সামারাইজ করবো। আমার টোটাল 5টা ক্লাস, I will take 5 classes, okay, on different topics. So don't worry, just enjoy the class. And
স্যার